can pray, no man can worship, no man must promote his religion for 30 days. Are there laws that are connected to freedom to worship? Are there laws connected to freedom of religion? In the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, we read the following: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. So as we see in Davos, a movement to trample underfoot freedom of speech, to trample underfoot freedom of the press. What's next? To repudiate freedom to worship. Are we together? Here it is. Davos 2024. Listen.
For the global business community, the top concern for the next 2 years is not conflict or climate. It is disinformation and misinformation, followed closely by polarization within our societies. These risks are serious because they limit our ability to tackle the big global challenges we are facing. Changes in our climate.
Clip 2, Klaus Schwab.
You have this anti-system movement. What we are seeing is a revolution against the system. So fixing the present system is not enough. Now there is, of course, a anti-system which is called libertarianism.
You know, we're told in the book, 1 John chapter 4 and verse 3, the Bible speaks of the spirit of Antichrist. In 1 John chapter 2 and verse 18, the Bible speaks of the principal Antichrist. The Bible also says that there are many Antichrists. So these leaders at Davos 2024, they are directly and indirectly connected to Mr. Antichrist, the Pope of Rome on the earth. Take a look at this. This has been written in the papal encyclicals, the highest authoritative document in the Roman Catholic Church. Very similar to Laudato Si, to combat climate change, Fratelli Tutti. And what does the Pope say here? The principles enshrined in the U.S. Constitution must be repudiated. They are a pestilential error, and those who champion the liberties therein must be anathematized. And the church, through the state, can force conscience. The spirit of Antichrist. Back to Davos 2024. And listen to what they're saying now. It's time to rebuild trust. Who is this? The Black Pope and Pope Francis, the chief general of the Jesuits, Arturo Sosa. And now they're telling us that alternative media is a threat to democracy. A threat to what? Democracy.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Have we ever heard that before in the Bible? In John chapter 11, why did they crucify Jesus? One reason is because they feared his words of truth and his influence. In John chapter 11, verse 47 through verse 53, we must get rid of Jesus to preserve our nation. Question. I want you to answer in the chat. Is the U.S., is America, a constitutional republic or a democracy based on its founding? Is there a difference? And if there is a difference, does the difference matter? Listen to this.
Democracy is a form of government based upon the principle of majority rule, period. End of discussion. Now, that's not very complicated. Majority rule. It's easy to understand, easy to sell to the masses, and, I might add, deadly. For example, what would you call a lynch mob? That's majority rule. There's only one dissenting vote, and he's at the end of the rope. Now, that's pure democracy in action. But wait a minute, you say. The majority should rule, yes, but not to the extent of destroying the rights of the minority. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are no longer describing a democracy. We are speaking of a republic. A republic is a limited democracy. It's a form of government based upon the principle of limited majority rule. Limited so that the minority, even a minority of one, can be protected against the whims and passions of the majority. And how do you protect the minority from the majority? You write down a set of rules on a piece of paper. You say, this we can do, that we cannot. At the top of the paper, you write the word Constitution. And then everyone agrees to follow the rules no matter what the temptation. And when you're finished, you've created a constitutional republic.
Does the difference matter? Clip 2, listen to this.
A constitutional republic, not a democracy. The ideal of a democracy is universal equality. The ideal of a constitutional republic is individual liberty. A democracy always degenerates into dictatorship, which promises government-guaranteed equality and security, but it delivers nothing but poverty and serfdom for the people it robs and rules. America was founded as a constitutional republic to safeguard the liberties of the people against the tyranny of democracy or of one-man dictatorship. In this century, great strides have been made toward the goal of subverting our republic into a democracy. The foremost tactic of the subverters is subversion of language. By calling America a democracy until people thoughtlessly accept and use the term, the totalitarians have obscured the real meaning of our principles of government.
Former FBI agent Dan Smoot made that video.
That's clear. And here we have the UN leader, the WHO director, the Pope of Rome, all saying we must suppress freedom of speech. My friends, the account in the book of Daniel is about to be repeated. We must see a call to prayer. Last days we're living in. Do you see what time we're living in? The time of Daniel. And those who present truth are going to be called terrorists. And what did they call Daniel? They threw him in the lion's den. To them, he was a terrorist.
This is actually the Department of Homeland Security actually issued a memo in which it defined 3 kinds of, I kid you not, terrorism: mis, dis, and malinformation. Misinformation are errors. Disinformation are intentional errors, lies, and malinformation are things that are based in truth but cause you to distrust authority.
So malinformation is what you commit when you catch them lying.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it is.
Clip 2.
Yeah, it is discussing the lies of your government is malinformation and therefore a kind of terrorism, which I should point out, as funny as that is and as obviously Orwellian as that is, it's also terrifying, because if you have tracked the history of the spreading tyranny from the beginning of the War on Terror, you know that terrorism is not a normal English word the way it once was.
Listen.
Terrorism is now a legal designation that causes all of your rights to evaporate. So at the point that the Department of Homeland Security says that you are guilty of a kind of terrorism for saying true things that cause you to distrust your government, they are also telling you something about what rights they have to silence you.
In chapter 6 of Daniel, the Bible says in verse 9, "Wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees, and 3 times a day, and he prayed, and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime. So what led Daniel to pray 3 times? In this context, because there was a crisis. Laws were signed. Are we now seeing the very same thing being enacted now? We must see a call to prayer. What prayer did Daniel pray? In chapter 6, we don't see. But if we realize the words in verse 10, he opened his window toward Jerusalem and prayed. I wonder what he prayed. At this time, send in your prayer requests in the chat. Let's take a look at 1 Kings chapter 8. Let's see why Daniel opened his window toward Jerusalem and prayed. What words did he pray? In verse 30, and hearken thou to the supplication of thy servant and of thy people Israel, when they shall pray toward this place, the words of Solomon, when your people pray towards this place, Jerusalem, hear thou in heaven, thy dwelling place, and when thou hearest, forgive. Forgive. And verse 35, when heaven is shut up, and there is no rain, because they have sinned against thee, if they pray toward this place, and confess your name, and turn from their sin. Verse 36, then hear thou in heaven, and bless them according to thy word. What is your prayer request today? Victory over sin? Look at verse 37. What did Daniel pray? What are we to pray? Now today, we don't turn toward literal Jerusalem. That temple has been destroyed. We turn now to heaven, the heavenly Jerusalem. Look at verse 37. If there be in the land famine, is that your prayer request? If there be pestilence, disease, a health diagnosis, blasting, mildew, locust, have you lost anything temporally? Locust, eating up that which you had. Then it says, whatever plague or sickness there be, whatever prayer and supplication from any man be made in this place. Verse 39, then hear thou in heaven, forgive their sin, and heal their land. A call to prayer. Was this prayer only for Jews, the Hebrews? In verse 41, moreover, concerning a stranger, if that person comes and pray